I'm Alan Sepinwall. I'm a TV critic.
I'm Catherine VanArendonk. I am also a TV critic.
We are friends and neighbors, and we love to talk about TV with each other.
And now we are going to talk about it with you.
That's right. This is the TV is Good podcast. And every week, we're going to look at one current show and one classic show as we try to answer an important question. Is the TV good?
For our current segment this week, we are going to be talking about the new HBO Sunday night series Lanterns, in which Kyle Chandler plays definitely not Coach Taylor Green Lantern, and Aaron Pierre plays, confusingly, another Green Lantern?
It's less confusing if you're a nerd, so we'll get into that.
Great.
But also, even though he's not playing Coach Taylor, Kyle Chandler is in a football stadium at a high school a bunch of times.
Yeah, like within minutes of the first episode.
For our classic segment this week, we're going with a comic book deep cut with the 2008 ABC Family comedy adventure, The Middleman. I'm really excited to get into that. First, we have a lot of other stuff to get through.
Yes.
First of all, we ran a Patreon poll for our September 7th episode, which is going to be on Labor Day. And so we decided to give the Patreons the option between 4 different comedy episodes dealing in some way or other with workplace issues. So we did Last Exit to Springfield from The Simpsons, where the power plant goes on strike to get their dental plan back. We went with the pilot of Enlightened, the first Laura Dern, Mike White show, where Laura Dern is in a lot of trouble with HR after having a nervous breakdown at work. We went with the news radio episode Complaint Box, where they put a complaint box at the radio station and it doesn't go well. And our winner was Sensation After... Oh, God. I'm going to have to practice this when we actually do the Patreon.
You can do it. I believe in you.
Sensation Awards After Party. The 5th episode of Season 1 of Party Down, where the cater waiters have to work an after party for a porn awards. And hijinks ensue and inappropriate workplacey things happen. This was an underdog. I assumed Last Exit to Springfield was going to run away with it.
I am delighted, although at some point this podcast is going to have to contend with the fact that I don't know that much about The Simpsons. So I'm happy to kick that particular can down the road. I mean, I know that it is in our future, and that's what I earned as a child not allowed to watch The Simpsons. But I love Party Down. I'm so excited to talk about it. I can't believe our Patreons did not want to hear me talk about Joe Rogan.
That was the one drawback of doing Complaint Box, which is otherwise a perfect episode of comedy. So if you want to do the homework before that episode, Party Down is streaming on Prime. It is also streaming for free on Plex with ads, I believe. Before we move on, I do have one regret about our previous Patreon episode where we were talking about the leftovers. Catherine at one point used the phrase, I'm paraphrasing here, but you said, there is no one like Carrie Coon. There is no one who looks like Carrie Coon. And immediately, as soon as we finished, my thoughts turned to the whole mess during Fargo Season 3, where suddenly there were all these people discovering Carrie Coon for the first time and saying, wait, isn't that Anna Torv? And to the point where when Twitter got rid of verification for prominent people, Carrie Coon's very next tweet was, I'm Anna Torv.
I love her.
I love her too. I love Anna Torv for that matter, but it's just that in the moment, sometimes the obvious does not occur to me. So I would like to apologize to the patrons who I'm sure were screaming, Anna Torv, Anna Torv, in that moment.
And if you were, you're our people.
Catherine, why does your voice sound like this?
I don't know what you're talking about. I sound great. I have been traveling. I have been abroad. As you know, if you have been listening, and I was talking about my real pleasure in watching TV in other countries. I went on a family trip. We went to Switzerland and Germany. We attended a very lovely family wedding. And then, as always happens, one of my children acquired a cold. I then acquired that cold. They were fine within 2 or 3 days. I spent the last 3 days. I want you to understand that this is the best I have sounded since Sunday, and this is now a Thursday. And at some point we were like, we have to record because otherwise we're not going to have an episode on Monday. So we got to go with this, and it's going to be fine. It's going to be, for some reason I have become a person who, when I get sick, I'm now very prone to losing my voice. If anyone has any tips about how to fix this and how to not lose my voice.
It's funny you mention that, because the advantage of us having your trip allowed me to recover from losing my own voice, because while you were touring the Alps and sending these just ridiculous, clearly AI generated photos.
Dude, all of Switzerland looks like, all of like the area where we were in Switzerland, you walk outside and you're like, this is fake. It's fake. How is this? It's so gorgeous. I don't know why everyone in my entire social circle and Instagram feed all went to Switzerland this summer. This is another thing that I don't understand. If everyone could explain it, that would be great. It's so expensive and it's so, so, so beautiful. And the cows have giant bells on them, just like they're supposed to in Heidi. It's bananas.
So while you were gone, I recorded the entire audiobook for my Rod Serling biography, Serling: A Journey into the Twilight Zone with TV's First Visionary, now available for pre-order, blah, blah, blah. We'll do the plugs again later, including now a plug for Kathryn that I'm excited to get to. And we still need to talk about European TV, but because we're on the subject of voices...
Oh, I have thoughts.
I recorded the entire audiobook. It's the first time I've done a whole audiobook. When Matt Zoller Seitz and I did TV the book, we split it basically down the middle. I read the stuff I'd written, he read the stuff he'd written. When I did the audiobook for Welcome to the OC, I read my narration, like the stuff that I had written, and Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage read the things that they said, and they hired actors to play Ben McKenzie and Rachel Bilson and everybody else. So I did it before, but not to this extent. And this is a 300-word, 110,000, 300-page, 110,000 odd word book. This was a lot. And we get to the first day, and I'm like an hour or two into it, and already I can start to feel my voice failing.
Yeah.
And I say this to my director, and they're like, Alan, I can already hear it. You need to dial it back. You're being too forceful. It's okay to just like talk like a person, And as you know, as you listen to this podcast, I don't really have an inside voice, so this is a challenge for me. And so basically, from that point on, she's like, you need to start drinking tea. You need to drink as much water as you can. And so our engineer, who like has a home studio, like every 20 minutes or so, he had to run up to his kitchen and heat me up a new mug of hot water. And I would drink the whole mug of hot water. If you can have tea with honey, that's helpful. Ginger, also very good. I'm a really picky drinker, so I was just having the plain water. That really helped, and I was able to calm down. And I was doing really well for the first 3 days of it, for the most part. And I was making sure, didn't drink any milk, didn't have any kind of dairy whatsoever. And the last day I wake up, I'm going to make myself some eggs for a little protein, get over there, discover I did not make the grocery run the night before. We are out of eggs. We are really out of any breakfast food I could have other than cereal with milk, which, again, bad. So I get in the car, drive to the studio. I'm passing a bagel place. I pick up a bagel with butter. Not thinking, oh, it's melted butter. This will be fine. Listener, it was not fine.
Oh, no.
I get to the studio, and like for the first 20 minutes, I sound so much worse than you do right now. I sound like a cat being strangled or something. And we had an extra day built into the schedule, and the director starts to say, you know what? Maybe let's just pack it in and come back tomorrow. I said, no, wait. And there are like 6, 7, 8 bottles of water on the table next to me. I drank all of them in about like 2 minutes. And then I'm like, oh, this feels much better. And I'd flushed it all out.
Yeah.
And I was so strong for the rest of the day that in fact we went back and we re-recorded that first 20 minutes of stuff, which we didn't necessarily think we were going to have time to do. But then I got home and my voice went away for a while. So it's just, my advice would be to drink hot water. Rest it.
Yeah.
As soon as we finish recording this podcast, and hopefully by the time we do the next one, we will be better. But it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. So what you're saying is this coffee I'm chugging right now, because I'm also jet lagged, is maybe not my friend.
Probably. Is there cream in the coffee?
A tiny bit.
Put the coffee down.
No, I need it. I need it so bad.
Other thing about the audiobook, before we get back to Swiss Bones or whatever you watched in Switzerland.
German Bones.
Is, for the most part, I'm not trying to do impressions of other people, even though there's a lot of famous people quoted in the book. I will occasionally do like a deeper voice, or when I do a Twilight Zone intro, I will sort of talk in the Rod Serling cadence. But at one point, I'm reading a quote from Charlie Brooker, the creator of Black Mirror, who's talking about the obvious influence that Twilight Zone had on the show. And Charlie Brooker, who's English, refers to Rod Serling as a bloke. And I'm thinking, this is a word that an American person should not be casually dropping into a sentence.
Yes.
And I joke like, well, what if I do it English and I bust out like just the world's worst working class English accent, and the director says, oh, that was perfect, let's just go back to the beginning and re-record everything. But I did not. But this makes me wonder, though, do you have aspirations to do the audiobook for the Bluey Years?
I have no idea what the audiobook situation for the book will be. A couple people have asked. I don't know. I'm excited to find out.
Okay, but if you do it, how hard will it be to avoid going Aussie when you're either citing dialogue from the show or quoting Joe Brumm?
It will not be hard because I'm terrified of any version of Australian accent that I then screw up. My primary concern is like bloke. There's a couple of words that just don't exist in American English, like boggin, which is like the Australian equivalent of a redneck, essentially. And I mean, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. But yeah, I know myself well enough to know I can't get close to that with a 10-foot pole or meter pole in Anglophilic countries.
Okay, we'll get back to this. What is the best TV that you watched in Switzerland or Germany?
Well, we watched Bones, which is a requisite. My children have only ever seen Bones in other languages.
So French... Bones is just always on the TV in Europe.
Yes, and tons of American procedurals. They had CSI. I think they had CSI New York. They had Lie to Me, which I haven't thought about in many a year. We were
Tim Roth in Lie to Me.
100%, all in German. We were in the German part of Switzerland also, so it was German language throughout. We have watched Bones in French, which was very destabilizing because the French performance of Hodgins is too sexy, which totally screws up that entire character. Makes more sense in German. In German, Bones is called Die Knochenjägerin, which is like the bone hunters, not bones. But the best, and we watched a lot of other bits and pieces of things. Some of it being in some of it is original Swiss or German programming. A lot of it is dubbed from other languages. One of the shows that I watched that was original German programming seems to have been a reality show about firefighters. And it was like the daily life of sort of German firefighters. And I only watched maybe 15 to 20 minutes of it, but I was captivated. Feuerwerk in Einschatz, I think it was called. And I was captivated by a fully 5 to 6 minute long segment in which these German firefighters attempt and mostly fail to get a cat out of a tree. They're just up there in the tree going like, hello, kommen Sie. And I was like, you gotta grab this cat, guys. Like, you cannot talk to a cat and try to like.
That's like Fireman 101.
Yes, they had like this net, and at one point, and the girls were watching with me, and at one point they sort of like try to poke the net underneath the cat to get the cat to, I don't know, decide to leap into a net, and instead the cat goes up higher into the tree, and all of the German firefighters are like, nein, was ist passiert? Anyway, it was just, yes, fascinating what other countries. We watched a lot of veterinary programming in German. Yeah, it's always a treat. This was no exception. It's gotten even better now that my kids have gotten in on my pleasure. And so one of the frequent, you're jet lagged, you're trying to get yourself to bed at odd hours. And the kids love to just be like, let's watch German TV, Mom. I know you want to. Let's just turn it on. We don't have to take a shower yet. Just another 20 minutes of Bones in German. And you're like, fine. They get me every time.
While you were there and while I was resting from the audiobook, I took one of my kids away for a much less exotic but still very fun and very scenic getaway to the Poconos. We went hiking, we went whitewater rafting, all of that stuff.
Lovely.
And also, while we did not watch Swiss Bones, we did begin watching Watchmen. And we'll be talking about another Damon Lindelof superhero show in a minute. But
yes,
the kid had just finished reading the Watchmen comic and said, can we see the TV show? And it's, I have not seen it, I think, since 2019. And it's just fun to go back to it. But also it's fun, like, when you're watching a mystery box show and you know all the answers with someone who doesn't. And, like, trying very hard to not say anything when they are going down the wrong path. They're making the wrong guesses. And I'm like, maybe. Could be. Like,
who knows?
They are completely wrong about who Jeremy Irons is playing. And I can't say a goddamn thing about that.
Delightful.
So,
oh, that's so fun.
All right. So the last thing, because we've been talking for quite a while, and I know people want to hear us talk about lanterns.
Yes, sorry.
I mentioned, yes. No. I mentioned there was a lot to get through. We were away.
Yeah.
The Bluey Years.
Yeah.
What is happening now with the Bluey Years?
Well, I've heard
and it's Bluey Years, not Bluey Ears,
yes.
Which is confusing, especially when you see the cover of it.
Yes. The Bluey Years is a book that I allegedly have written, and I'm pretty excited about the fact that it kind of sort of exists in the world now, which is to say it has a cover, which you can go see. It is on my Instagram at VanArendonk, and it has a pre-order link, a link that you could use to exchange currency for the future receipt of this book. I've never written a book, Alan, before. Are pre-orders like an important part of the book process, do you think?
They are enormously important. It, like, literally, pre-orders have somehow become everything because, like, bookstores make their decisions on how much to stock when the book actually comes out based on the pre-orders. So I've had situations with at least 2 of my books where they ran out of copies in the first week of publication because the bookstores, like, wildly underestimated the demand because, like, whoever wanted to read thought, oh, I'll just go to Barnes & Noble or wherever to get it then. And that's not the case. Or literally Amazon has run out of copies of books I've written.
Wow.
So, yeah, and you would think they just have bottomless everything. So this is really helpful both for making things available, but just for all kinds of things, because it's like once the book is successful, it's then, as we talk about all the times with the algorithm, it's then pushed out to even more people. So if you spend the next year or less than a year now pre-ordering the Bluey Years, which does exist, which I have read, which is great. Oh. And I say this not just because I am mentioned on the first page of the book.
First page, yeah.
Yes. It's really good. If you pre-order that, you will be doing Kathryn an enormous solid in the same way that if you pre-order my Rod Serling book, you will be doing me an enormous solid. And we appreciate whatever you do for us because we love you, listener or viewer.
We really appreciate it. It's a book that I'm really proud of. It has a lot of interviews with Joe Brum, who created Bluey, and with a bunch of other Bluey animators and artists, and also with child psychologists, and with all these kind of interesting people who I wanted to be able to ask about this show that I find so fascinating. It is not an anti-bandit book. I want to be clear.
That is not how I read it.
Well, we will discuss this at greater length when it is closer to release time. But I want to echo all of Alan's comments about it, except for the fact that it's good, which I'm not allowed to say. Maybe, hopefully it is. People will think maybe it is.
You can say it's good. I think the Serling book is like the best thing I've ever written. And
You should. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Anyway. Yes. All right. Let's talk about television. Books is not what this podcast
television.
is about. Yes. Get away with
Lanterns.
Yes.
Lanterns. It's the latest DC Universe project overseen by James Gunn, based on a long-running DC superhero called Green Lantern, who you might remember was the main character of a terrible epic bomb starring Ryan Reynolds, whose career almost died as a result of it until he was able to convince people to let him play Deadpool again. There have actually been, to your point about being confused, there have been many Green Lanterns over the years. This show focuses on 2 of them, who often, work together in the comics. There's a whole Green Lantern corps with, thousands of Green Lanterns. They are space cops patrolling all sectors of the universe.
But they exist for the planet at the same time? Like, that's part of the usual...
For a long time, it was like there's one Green Lantern per sector, and so Hal Jordan would patrol Earth, but also other planets, and then he would have backups. And his original backup was Guy Gardner, who's the character Nathan Fillion plays in Superman and briefly plays in this. And then in the 70s, a writer was like, you know what? Like, comics should be more reflective of society. What if we introduce a black Green Lantern? And they came up with John Stewart, and he was Hal's backup for a while. Then in the 80s, he took over as the main Green Lantern. And then later in the 80s, suddenly a writer was like, why can't there be a bunch of Green Lanterns on Earth all at once? And so Hal, John, Guy Gardner, and several other Green Lanterns are all on Earth at the same time. One of those Green Lanterns was a chipmunk named Chip, CH''P.
A chipmunk?
Yes.
How did it wear a ring?
On its paw. I think it was like it didn't fit on the finger. Sometimes they're different based on the anatomy of the wearer, and there is in fact one Green Lantern in the comics named Mogo, who is a planet.
What?
Yes.
What?
Yes, and the show mentions Mogo, which I appreciate. Okay. But we'll get back to this. Kyle Chandler is playing Hal Jordan, the classic Silver Age hero. He's a test pilot, fearless, cocky, seen it all, done it all. He has been, at the time that most of the season takes place, which is 2016, Green Lantern for more than 20 years. He is famous, beloved. Aaron Pierre is playing John Stewart, who in this version is an ex-Marine. He's been chosen by the Guardians of the Universe, the people who give out the Green Lantern rings, to be Hal's backup and possible successor. Hal wants no part of either of this. He's like, I'm Green Lantern. I don't need a sidekick. I don't need anyone to replace me. And they wind up investigating a murder in a small town in Nebraska that Hal thinks aliens might have been involved with. The show was created by 3 people. The main showrunner is Chris Mundy, who is a longtime producer of Ozark, has written for the most recent season of True Detective, was the creator of Low Winter Sun, which is we have to talk more about in a bit. The aforementioned Damon Lindelof is another co-creator who has obviously written a superhero show before with Watchmen, co-created Lost in the Leftovers, both of which have been discussed on this podcast, and Tom King, a veteran comic book writer. So they wind up in rural Nebraska. The local sheriff is played by Kelly MacDonald. We have seen the first 7 of 8 episodes of this. Where do you want to begin, Catherine?
Okay. I don't know anything about Green Lantern. So yes. I am one of the people who is coming into this show, and there will be many of them who are like, yes. Damon Lindelof, HBO Sunday show. These are my frameworks for what I'm about to see. Obviously, I have encountered at this point in my career a fair number of like comic booky things, and there are all these different kinds of approaches to them. And the question is always, is this going to be a comic book show, or is this going to be one of the ones where it's like we're like a gritty remake, we're going to be serious about this? And my feeling is that it can't quite decide which one of those it wants to be.
Yes.
I really enjoyed a lot of parts of this show. I more enjoyed the parts that feel Lindelof-y to me, particularly I think in the later stretch of the season that we have seen so far gets weirder, which I'm super into, but it feels like, and I have a review on Vulture that you can go and read that sort of also is along these lines. It feels to me like Kyle Chandler is doing a really like wisecracky superhero guy. He's got a carnivorous pet plant, and he's got a ring, and he's doing shenanigans. And then Aaron Pierre is in a very different kind of show, a much more serious one that is about like big ideas and these kind of abstract, like what happens, like the Green Lantern. I've learned from this show, his deal is that he has to be fearless. And so there's a part of this show that's trying to take very seriously, like what would it mean for a black man to grow up in the United States without fear? And that is also really interesting, but it feels like these things have been Frankensteined together, and I can't always tell, and it's like they're yanking them back and forth, these two actors, between these two sort of sides of the show, and I can't always tell where Lanterns itself wants to live.
I'm with you on all that, and I definitely enjoyed more of the show than I didn't, but it is a confused and or confusing show, even to me as someone who knows a lot of Green Lantern lore, and I can talk more about that if you really want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think I probably am less confused because I know nothing, so I'm just like, all right, whatever.
There's a Green Lantern who predates Hal Jordan from the 1940s named Alan Scott, who has a magic ring as opposed to a science fiction ring, and his weakness is wood. The ring won't work on wood, so one of his nemeses is a guy with a baseball bat.
Cool.
And then Hal Jordan, for decades, his ring will not work on the color yellow.
Yes, they say something about that in the thing.
I think so, but they've gotten rid of it in the comic books by now, at least the last time I checked.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things going on. Here's the thing about my biggest concern about the show. The Green Lantern ring is the most powerful weapon in the universe. You can do anything with it so long as, like, you have enough willpower. You can conjure anything up out of it. You can go anywhere, do anything. This is an idea that lends itself to a big budget movie that is ideally a lot better than the Martin Campbell film starring Ryan Reynolds. But this show either does not want to or cannot show Hal or John using the ring for much of anything.
Yeah.
It's things like, Hal wants to, like, play a jukebox at a bar, so he rings up a counterfeit bill. Or he, like, makes a bottle opener to open someone's bottle. Every now and then he will make a generic bubble so that, someone is attacking him and the bullets don't go through. He almost never wears the costume. He's just usually traveling around in, like, a jacket and jeans and work boots. And even when you see one of the Guardians of the Universe, it's played by Laura Linney, just disguised as Laura Linney. And it just... I don't know that you can do a Green Lantern show on a TV budget. You can do Peacemaker on a TV budget because that's just a big meathead with a gun and a stupid helmet. That doesn't cost a lot. And so it feels like there's both the budget issue, but also there's the thing that I felt like we had gotten away from after, almost 20 years of Marvel Cinematic Universe, and especially after James Gunn had taken over DC, which is... There's a period when, like, pop culture would do comic book things, but try to be like, yeah, but we're not really a comic book show, or we're a comic book show, but we demand you take us seriously. So something like Heroes, which is pretentious and humorless, and nobody ever wears a costume. Hero on that show, like, was funny, but nobody else was. There was a period, the early X-Men movie, they're just wearing leather jackets. It's just nobody wants to have anybody be in a costume or, like, have code names or really embrace the comic booky stuff. And there's movies starring Ant-Man, for God's sake. There were 2 Aquaman films. The Superman film not only has the Guy Gardner Green Lantern, but has a character named Mr. Terrific, who I love. But again, he is called Mr. Terrific, and it's unapologetic. And this show, like, will allude to Lantern things, and there's a reference to Mogo, the planet-sized Green Lantern, and a bunch of other stuff. But it's also like, we are being a prestige drama. We are being very much in the vein of True Detective, down to, like, we have these multiple timelines, and we're investigating a murder mystery, and there's, like, one sort of veteran guy, and one intensely serious guy, and one wisecracking guy, and it's all of these things. And I'm like, why are you doing this? And yet... It kind of works in spite of that, because Kyle Chandler is really fun and really
having a great time.
And Kelly MacDonald playing, Scottish treasure Kelly MacDonald playing a Midwesterner, and I don't think her accent is necessarily great, but it doesn't matter. Because she is, like, so funny, getting exasperated over and over again. And then on top of that, they do this thing. You had seen the screeners before I had. And so I'm watching them, and I'm texting you constantly, like, as things are coming up, and it basically turns into the Vince McMahon meme, where I'm like, Jason Ritter?
Yeah.
Chris Coy? Garrett Dillahunt?
Garrett Dillahunt, for me, his existence in this show first is so smart, because he is the kind of actor who, once you see him, you're like, oh, this show's okay to get, like, a little freaky, a little odd. And I think he is where tonally this show should be living, and is a little afraid of actually occupying for as much as it should be. I'm not going to spoil anything for anyone who has seen Lindelof's earlier work, and particularly Watchmen. He has a fondness for a particular kind of joke to do with anatomy. And Garrett Dillahunt, it was like, great, let's go. And it feels like he is confident in the zone of oddness where I like Lanterns best, when it is in that space. And I wish more of the show felt like it could occupy that sense of confident strangeness. But it's also like, I got Garrett Dillahunt. He's in enough scenes of this show where I was going to like it no matter what. I wish more of it was like that. But the other thing about that one is like, he is caught up in some plot mechanisms that you figure out pretty early. And so then you're like, how long do I have to wait before the show is going to show me the plot mechanisms? Happily, I don't think it's that long, but it's also a very interestingly paced show, sometimes in a way that works and sometimes in a way that is frustrating.
Yeah, because they're sort of bouncing around between timelines. There are a couple of different instances where I sort of said to myself, okay, so what's the rest of the season now? Where are we going with this? But I do think, again, Chandler's really good, and while Pierre at times is in a different show, especially when he's off on his own, when the two of them are together, I really like that dynamic. I think Pierre makes a really good straight man for Chandler, and Chandler is just love and life. It's the most sort of, bon vivant. It's basically, if you've ever seen a Kyle Chandler interview, this, like, he's just playing Kyle Chandler. And that's very fun. And it's almost surprising how light it is. And I guess probably you would want to credit that to Lindelof or even Tom King, whose comics can sometimes be super grim and gritty, but also can be playful. He did like a Batman issue where Batman and Superman go on a double date with Catwoman and Lois Lane. And like they're like at a costume party and they did not think to bring costumes. And so Batman and Superman just wear each other's costumes, and Lois dresses up as Catwoman, and Catwoman just wears Lois's regular clothes, and she's like, I make anything look like a costume. So, yeah. So, like, Low Winter Sun, to me, I always look at that as like the nadir of the 2010s. We are chasing the ghosts of The Sopranos and Breaking Bad, and we're just going to do anti-hero, anti-hero, anti-hero. And it was like a parody of all of those shows that didn't realize it was a parody. And then when The Good Wife came around, they did a parody of Low Winter Sun.
They did.
Was it Darkness at Noon?
Something. I think that was from a different, maybe. Let's see. I'm trying to remember.
Alicia Florrick loved a show that was 100% supposed to be Low Winter Sun. And so while the trailers do make it look like True Detective, and it's structured
Darkness
like True
at
Detective.
Noon.
Yes. It there's a whimsical quality to it in the midst of all this investigation and just weird shit happening left and right. But also, like you say, this intense psychological stuff about what Jon Stewart's entire life has been like to get him to this point. And some of that's interesting, but it's just, there's a lot of backstory, and here's maybe the most frustrating part, even more frustrating than the fact that he barely uses the ring, and the ring is almost always on the verge of running out of juice, which is every single plot point, and especially every bit of backstory, has to be explained 5 or 6 times, often within the same episode.
Yes.
And when The Rip was coming out, the Matt Damon, Ben Affleck Netflix movie, they went on their press tour and they kept talking over and over again about how frustrated they were that Netflix allegedly now gives notes to creatives saying, you have to write assuming that everyone watching will be glancing at their phone constantly, and you have to do exposition multiple times.
Yeah.
And it sure as hell, based on what Lindelof has done previously versus this, it sure as hell feels like HBO is now giving out the exact same note, and it sucks.
And if that's not the note, then I really wonder why there is so much anxiety about the communication of those backstory notes, because the backstory is also where a lot of the race, like to the extent that this show is doing a kind of Watchmen-y investigation of blackness as it relates to a superhero identity, it's coming out of those backstory scenes. And the unfortunate overlap of that being where those themes live, and also then telling that story over and over and over and over again, it makes it feel anxious, and it lacks the kind of confidence that the things that happen around the whole, like, it's not just Garrett Dillahunt, it's like his whole compound that eventually you're like, oh, this is a freak zone. That, you know, instead it feels so blunt and rote in those flashback scenes. It's really a shame. And part of what I like about the Aaron Pierre character is that toward the end of the episodes that we've seen, as Alan said, we haven't seen the finale. Toward the end, he does start to relax his grip a little bit on that character. The dynamic between him and Jordan feels like it settles for a bunch of plot reasons that we can't get into. And the sense of humor that Chandler and other sort of minor characters have had throughout the show, it finally feels like, again, for like plot reasons, it's not like this is an accident. This is sort of a deliberate arc that they're doing with that character. It finally feels like he gets to drop some of the mask that he has been holding this whole time. And it is a relief, but you're also like, I needed some of this earlier instead of repeating all those same notes before.
Yes. Although the interesting thing is when Nathan Fillion, he does turn up in an episode as Guy Gardner. And in the Superman movie and in many of his comic book appearances, Guy is a clown. He's just like toxic masculinity, like deliberate parody of that. And it's not that Fillion is playing him straight in this, but he's playing him straighter. Like he's taken more seriously than he was in the movie. And I found that kind of an interesting choice. And that was the scene between him and Stewart is a fun dynamic. I thought.
I think I was talking with my colleague Roxana, as I often do when we're talking about shows like this, and she was like, I can't stand that character. And I was like, I can't stand him either, but it's sort of fine because the show also can't stand him. But yes, there is definitely your mileage may vary as far as how much you're willing to just even be in his presence. If the show is taking him even a modicum more serious than it is. And I do think, one of the saving graces of this show is that it is doing a lot of that, like, what happens if superheroes were real and people actually had to live with the consequences of a superhero action that has become a fairly familiar take on superhero genre. It's doing that, I think, pretty well, but in the process of doing that is not going full, like, dark, sad realism.
Yeah.
It just then can't quite land on where else it's supposed to live.
I mean, I committed to recapping this for What's Alan Watching before I'd seen a frame of it, because I figure it's superhero show, HBO Sunday, etc.
Yeah.
Chandler, Lindelof, all of that. And it's fascinating. Again, parts of it don't work at all. Parts of it, like, are wildly in conflict with other parts of it. And then, like, suddenly it all clicks. And you're like, wow.
This rips.
Thank you, show. Yes, show. Do it, show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like it's been a while since we've had something that's quite as much of a roller coaster as this.
It's a mess, but I do think it is not boring in the process of being a mess, which is a really, except for the backstory that has to keep repeating, it is not dull. And so there is, compared with, I have very little patience for Ozark. That is not my bag.
Same. That's our buddy Jim Ponawazik said, like, what if you asked ChatGPT to create its own Breaking Bad?
It's not a thing that I can hang with, and that was, I think, the worst case scenario for this show, and delightfully, it is not that at all. It's not a great scenario where you're like, maybe in a season 2, this show figures itself out, but I really am like, I would be thrilled if in a season 2, this show really figures itself out. It could be so fun.
I kind of wonder what's going to happen with that, because Gunn, this week it came out that a number of the early projects Gunn had talked about for TV aren't happening. There was going to be a Booster Gold show. That's not happening. The Amanda Waller show, which I think was already dead in the water, but like was sort of made official. That's not happening. Some others. On the Marvel side, they renewed and then unrenewed Wonder Man, which is a bummer because I really, really like that show a lot. And so I wonder if like both of these studios are deciding we need to really pull back and focus the comic book stuff on the big screen and not do these shows, especially because it's, as we're seeing with Lanterns, it's really tricky to do this kind of show on a TV budget. I don't know. I mean, I think there's going to be an audience for this.
Yeah. But I also think the problem with the show is that the audience is going to be, some of the audience is going to be like, I like True Detective. And some of the audience is going to be like, I like comic book shows. And so they are going to be frustrated by opposing things about what this is and whether or not you can sustain that as a full group, as of enough of an audience to make more of it. I don't know.
And I remember with Friday Night Lights, there was this whole thing of like, the challenge with that show was the people who would love a well-crafted teen drama didn't necessarily want to watch a show about football. And the people who cared about football didn't want to watch a teen drama. And like, if you could drag someone from either group in front of the TV to see it, they would love it because ultimately the elements worked in harmony. If you didn't care about football, it would make you love football and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Well, not love, but
make you root for the Panthers and then the Lions.
Sure.
With this show, I do think it's going to be more of like, an oil and water kind of thing where you're here for one or the other and they're never really quite coming together.
Yes, I think so. I think that's the case. Yeah.
And yet Kyle Chandler and Kelly MacDonald and, as we said, Garrett Dill Hunt.
I love Kelly MacDonald in this show.
So good. So good.
Yeah. Our classic show is a show that I know you and I both love very, very much, and we're really excited to have a chance to talk about it. It is a classic one-hit, one-season wonder, canceled too soon. How did it ever exist in the first place kind of a show? If you have not seen it, if you have kids who are like tween, teen, and open to comic booky at all, they're not going to get any of the references. That's okay. That's an important part of being a child and experiencing culture, is hearing all the references you don't get. They all watch Gilmore Girls, they'll survive. We are talking about The Middleman, a 2008 ABC Family show created by Javi Grillo-Marxuach. And it is a truly bizarre gem of 12 episodes of television. Go buy the full season. You can buy. I bought it on Prime.
For like $10 right now.
$10 on the platform of your choice. I really only had time to watch one. Found myself halfway through another one just by accident. The premise of this show is a classic sort of comic book scenario. Wendy Watson, played by a very young, brand new Natalie Morales. She's a struggling artist and bohemian weirdo. And she is recruited. She has a photo.
She lives in a loft with another photogenic artist, and the on-screen Chiron always says like trendy apartment,
photogenic artist. Yes.
Yes.
But she also has a Cam Jansen memory, like she can remember everything she's ever seen. Yeah. And she is recruited by a mysterious organization, and their job is to come in and fix all of the kinds of bizarre superhero-y. He is not a superhero. He's just the middleman. He's the guy who shows up when the alien shows up, and then it gets eliminated, and then he's got to clean up the problems. He's got to wipe all the memories. He's got to all the little bits and pieces of living in a superhero space he has to deal with, and she is going to be his sidekick. So Natalie Morales plays Wendy Watson. Matt Kiesler is the middleman. He's like a very sort of due south, Mountie, Dudley do right, straight guy. He drinks milk, and the pleasure of their dynamic is that she is this strange, emotive artist, and he is like in the perfectly done up suit the whole time, and is generally unfazed by any of the strange alien tentacles that are constantly being thrown in their faces. They have a robot Moneypenny figure who is she's always angry at them. She has cat eye glasses. It is so charming and so light, but with a real emotional core, which helps sell these characters. And I have thought about it and missed it more than many a one-season show that has been canceled and then eliminated from my life.
Now, the thing about this show is Javi Grillo Marxwatch tried to sell it as a pilot. He was a writer in the early years of Lost, so sort of interacted with Lindelof, some similar sensibility stuff, and he couldn't sell it. He wrote it as a comic book. I have the collection of that somewhere on a bookshelf in this office. And then once it was IP, he was finally able to sell it to television, to ABC Family, which was a cable channel that existed at the time. Now it is called Freeform. I don't think it makes any original shows anymore.
I don't think so. It was a very weird period, sort of like HBO attempted to do HBO and then Max, and you were like, what's Max? And they're like, you'll know it when you feel it. ABC Family was kind of a YA family-friendly arm of ABC programming.
Yes.
It was most famous at this period for Secret Life of the American Teenager, and has had these other shows like The Fosters, which are really special and interesting. But this was like a classic, like, I don't know, is this for teens or is this just, is it just sort of, we think it's slightly too strange to put on like a regular network, and so it had this kind of grab bag strangeness to the programming.
Yes. But also because he had come up with the idea, was obviously a comic book fan, and had written it as a comic book, it didn't have the problem that a lot of this stuff in the 2000s did, of being like embarrassed of its source material, because the creator had written the goddamn source material, and so it like jumps in with both feet into all of the silliness. The bad guy in the first episode is a talking gorilla who is really into gangster movies.
Yeah. It is in content, but also in style, very influenced by what a comic book looks like. So it has these title cards that it is constantly throwing up on the screen whenever they cut to a new location. They are long. They are honestly probably too long for you to read all of consciously as you are watching the show, unless you are paying super close attention all the time. The dialogue, similarly, I know you have some linked here, quoted here that we can laugh about in a second. The dialogue is super dense, like Amy Sherman Palladino dense, even more deliberately floral, I think. And there is something super 2008 about this show to me. And what I mean by that is this is a show that exists just as it is a feeling confident that people will be able to rewatch this show, that they're going to download it on some kind of, on like early iTunes, or they're going to get a DVD of it or something. Like, this is a show that's like, I need you to come back and watch it again, watch me again, because all of it is too dense to really get in one go.
Yes. All right. So here's the one I wrote down, and this is like 1,000,000% you could imagine somebody on Gilmore Girls saying this. You could maybe Kirk would say it because it's insane. Okay, but the middleman in the first episode says, if there's one thing I hate more than scientists trying to take over the world, it's scientists who twist innocent primates with computer-enhanced mind control to live out their sick and perverted fantasies of criminal power.
Yeah, that's
a normal line. And I'm not remotely
line.
Doing justice to how Matt Kiesler like delivers it.
Yes, that's a typical line, and it is full of not just sentences that have all of these interior clauses, but also funny little callbacks. And there's a repeated bit where Wendy comes back home and she has these her friend who's like a beatnik, like a weird beatnik jazz
Noser,
artist.
played by Jake Smollett.
Noser is sitting in the hallway, and they're just doing untagged, unreferenced like jazz lyrics back and forth with each other, song lyrics. The show has no need to explain or like apologize for that. They just live in this space of intense reference and intense speed. And at the time, it for sure was one of those things where you watch it and you're like, where did this come from? Who let this happen? And now looking back, it is remarkable how much it still feels like, where did this come from and who let this happen? Like you would never let something as fast. I mean, to think about Lanterns and how often it had to explain itself.
Yes, and this does none of that.
None of
that. And the other thing that made me think like this was kind of a perfect match for talking about Lanterns is Lanterns, the cheapness is a problem. Like, clearly they cannot do a proper Green Lantern show, and so this is their best way to work around that. This show looks like it was made for about $5 an episode. It's super cheap. And yet it turns that into a feature and not a bug. And so there's a lot of fun bits where it's like you don't see the action sequence and they just describe it later. There's a character who I think is only in one episode named Sensei Ping, who trains them, played by Mark Dacascos. And there's one episode where you see him and he's shirtless fighting a dozen luchadors. And that's about as big as the action gets. And there's lots of other times where it's like Wendy goes into a room to train with Sensei Ping. The middleman stands outside. There is a time cut. Wendy emerges sweaty and exhilarated. And it's like, man, you should have seen all the stuff I just did with Sensei Ping.
Yeah. The cheapness also, I mean, they have fun with it. Like, they are really owning it, but it also has unlike the Green Lantern, where the problem is that this ring should be able to do everything, and so you're like, show me everything. They get to own the kind of marginal status that they have within this bigger universe. It is a good fit for these characters and the roles that they play, that they are perpetually operating on like a nickel budget, and they don't have the coolest tools, and nobody really respects or pays attention to them. They're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be this backwater of superhero lore. There's an episode where there's a rival robot to their own what's her name? Ida? Is it
Ida? Yes.
Ida, yes. There's a rival robot, which you discover is this tween girl robot, and actually she has hijacked all of her programming because she's a super fan of a boy band, and she's just
she's trying to stop the boy band. It turns out we'll spoil this one, and the young robot is played by Eden Scher, who was later on the Middle and so good on the Middle.
Yeah,
the boy band is evil.
Yes,
and she's trying to stop the evil boy band, but they don't realize this until it's too late.
Yeah. The episode is called the Super Fan Boy Band something, but yes. And they list off all of the locations that this robot, that like the problems have been because it's the tour that this band has been on, and it's like Cleveland and Kalamazoo. And look, I am from the Midwest, so I'm allowed to say this. I grew up in Kalamazoo. This is a Kalamazoo level show. Like, they're not playing Madison Square Garden, you know? They're at VanArendonk Arena. And I adore it. It gives it so much texture and stakes, and everyone seems to be having a really good time, you know?
There's an episode, I wound up watching like 8 episodes of this. I figured, like you, I was going to watch 1 or 2 just to refresh my memory, maybe look back at my old recaps, because this is a show I love to recap back in the day. And instead, I just kind of kept going. And there's an episode where the housemates decide they are going to do art crawl, which is this periodic thing, because their whole building is artists, and they're just going to invite lots of people to see their stuff. And Noser, the Jake Smollett character, is like, should I do Stump the Band again? And you're like, well, what is that?
Yeah.
And he gets up, and Stump the Band is a game where you try to see if the band knows how to play the song, and they play it. The Noser version is people will call it the name of a song, and he will just go, yeah, I know that. And everyone goes, wow! And it's like, it's clearly a way to avoid having to pay music royalties, but it's also so goddamn funny.
It's so funny. And it helps also, like, the whole Loft vibe is not unlike New Girl. They have enough of that sitcom mechanism space which is so smart, because let me tell you what Lanterns is not. It is not a hangout comedy. And a comic book show does not need to be a hangout comedy, but having that space gives all of the Wendy Watson character it allows her to play with the like double role and the tension of, how much her roommates understand about her job is a part of this season, what they learn and what they don't learn, what they accept. But you get to capitalize on like who she is in one side of her life, who she is in another, and these people who love her, and the whole thing, rather than just being weird tentacles. It's also almost like the artist loft is more bizarre than the Middleman space, and so they play with the unexpected dynamics of which one feels less grounded than the other, but they can trade that back and forth. It's just very, very well constructed. Yes,
and we haven't even mentioned Britt Morgan as her other roommate, who develops a huge crush on the Middleman and always refers to him as sexy boss man in everything. We got to talk about Natalie Morales, though, because if this wasn't the first thing I saw her in, it was certainly the first thing I noticed her in. And good Lord, she just jumps off the screen.
100%.
Sometimes you will see an actor and they give a performance and you're like, I will watch everything this person does for the rest of their career. This was one of those for me.
Yeah. The Wendy Watson character, there's a lot of meat to it. And so it's not that I couldn't imagine anyone else playing this role and having a fun time in it. But Morales' performance gives her, she is able to do wry and wisecracky, but without feeling too nihilistic or too cruel, which I think is really a tricky balance sometimes.
Yeah.
She can fully play against this hilariously ridiculous straight man, middleman character and pull out all these interesting other sides to him. And then when she shows up in this artist's loft, makes just as much sense. And she is the character who has to hold the two sides of the show together. And it's so good. She comes out, she just seems delighted all of the time to have done this ridiculous fight with Sensei Ping that we didn't see, to be flabbergasted by the talking gorilla. She is just flapped enough, right? Like she is just able to be like, that's ridiculous, but also not totally overblown by how ridiculous it is. It's perfect.
And Kiesler's really good too.
Yes.
And the shame of it is his acting career basically ended a couple of years later. He struggled to find additional work. The last thing I remember seeing him in was an episode of Dollhouse, because he's very much a Joss Whedon kind of actor, because he's very tall and square-jawed. And
are we going to have to talk about Dollhouse at some point?
We can. I mean,
yeah.
We did Buffy when a while back, and it's Joss Whedon's a complicated figure, and
a normal man.
Yes, totally normal man.
Yep.
So I think that was one of the last things he did, and then the acting work dried up, and he even wrote something about it on social media. He's like, I haven't worked in a year. I'm losing, my SAG health insurance. I can't do this anymore. He moved to Oregon, went to nursing school, I think, maybe become a physician's assistant, also teaches at a medical school, all sorts of stuff. And it's like, he built this other life, and, good for him, but he's so much fun in this. And that's a character who's got to be dialed in just right, because it's like he is so ridiculous, and yet you have to believe him and like him and be into him as this hero guy, as well as the silly guy who drinks milk and does these silly exclamations and really wants to go see the movie Ride Lonesome and just never can.
Yeah.
I've seen the beginning of Ride Lonesome 57 times, and he always gets called away in the middle of the movie to save the world.
What a silly show. What a delightfully silly show. Yeah, no, he's also fantastic. Matt Kiesler, hope you're doing well. Hope life is treating you well, because it's a shame that has not been able to find more roles. Yeah.
Kathryn.
Yeah.
Was the TV good this week?
On the whole, the TV was good. Middleman is a fantastic show. Lanterns is a show that we really like, even when we are frustrated by it. And sometimes that is a perfectly fine TV week that we will accept, because the alternative is Ted Lasso.
And I mean, the thing is, a lot of modern TV, the problem is it's very smoothed out.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of that was fine.
Yeah.
And this is more classic TV of some parts are great, some parts are head scratching. And please
I'll take it.
Give me something that takes swings.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of takes swings, next week, we are going to be talking about the prime YA soap, Sterling Point. And the other thing that's like a speaking of Natalie Morales is just shot out of a cannon. She's so good. Ella Rubin and Sterling Point. Oh my God.
Oh, yep. We'll a lot of Ella Rubin discussion next week. This is a show that debuted earlier this summer. We wanted to talk about it in a previous episode, but the embargo made it impossible because it was like the day after the podcast episode would have come out. So it certainly seems like a lot of people have seen it, liked it. We're going to talk all about it, spoil stuff, etc. That will be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And because the producers but not showrunners of it are Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage, we will be looking back at their first collaboration, another acclaimed teen drama, The O.C. If you want to do some homework,
you know nothing about.
What do the letters stand for exactly?
I think it's to do with oranges, but I'm not
open container, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. If you want to do some homework, we'll be talking a lot about the OC, but we're going to try to center the discussion around maybe the most beloved episode, Season 1, Episode 13, The Best Christmaka Ever.
Yeah.
It is streaming on both HBO Max and
a banger.
Hulu. Spoiler, there may be more book plugs than usual
We're so
in
sorry,
that episode.
Guys. We gotta get these units sold. This is how this goes.
But speaking of plugs, when we are not podcasting, we are writers. You can find my writing at whatsalanwatching.com. You can find Catherine's at vulture.com. My Rod Sterling book is available for pre-order in any form, including now the audiobook. If you pre-order it, you will get a free bonus essay about my favorite Twilight Zone episode. I imagine Catherine's publisher will eventually do a pre-order incentive as well. And it doesn't matter if you don't have to wait until then to do the pre-order, because they always work. You just have to show, a screen cap of, I bought this thing. And as Kathryn mentioned, her Bluey book now available for pre-order. Every single link related to this will be in the show notes.
We thank you again for accepting that we need to use this podcast to plug writing. I don't know if you've heard, but writing is in kind of a crisis right now, and we're all just doing our best.
The Patreon is patreon.com/TVisGoodPod.
Yes.
I don't think I said the URL earlier. That link is also in the show notes.
We have not recorded our Party Down episode. I'm really excited to do that on a day when my voice works better, because I have a lot of thoughts about Party Down. It's going to be so good. And we appreciate our Patreons. Just like people who rate and review, they help us beat the algorithm.
And we hate the algorithm, but we love TV.
Thank you to Joe Kennedy for our theme music, Kate Bergener for our artwork, especially this week, Riley Rose for editing.
Thank you for listening.